What if the more you know yourself, the more you fall apart? We've always been told that knowing who we are is the path to freedom, but what if that same knowledge slowly begins to break us? This story begins with a man who dared to look deeper than most, Friedrich Nietzsche, a man who questioned everything, morality, religion, even the idea of truth itself. He believed that if we look too closely at ourselves, we might not find clarity, but chaos. Think about it. What happens when every comforting belief is taken away? When the story you've told yourself about who you are starts to fall apart. This is the dark side of self-awareness, not the light of enlightenment, but the shadow that follows it. A mirror that doesn't show who you are but reveals that you may not be anyone at all. And Nietzsche, he looked so deeply into that mirror that he shattered. Nietzsche once said, "I am not a man, I am dynamite." He didn't just write philosophy. He exploded the foundations of human belief. He saw the world clinging to ideas passed down for centuries. Ideas of right and wrong, good and evil, of gods watching over us. He took a hammer to it all. When he said, "God is dead," he didn't mean it as an attack. He meant something even more terrifying, that we no longer believed in the stories we used to. And now we were left with a giant hole where meaning used to be. Nietzsche believed that most people live asleep, following rules they never questioned. He called them the herd. But for the few who wake up, who see through the lies, life becomes far more dangerous. Because when you destroy the old truths, what's left? Nietzsche offered one answer: the Übermensch, or superhuman. Someone who creates their own values, who doesn't look to others for meaning, but makes meaning themselves. But that path is lonely. It's not safe. And it's not for everyone. Nietzsche warned us, if you gaze long enough into the abyss gazes back into you. That's what happens when you go too deep, when you question too much. The ground beneath your feet starts to disappear, and that's what happened to him. He spent his life searching for truth, but that search came at a cost. As he peeled away the masks of society and religion, he found nothing underneath. No stable self, no higher purpose, just the void. Today, we see the same thing in a different form. People are more self-aware than ever. But depression, anxiety, and isolation are rising too. We've been taught to look inside ourselves for truth, but sometimes when we do, we find emptiness. Too much self-awareness can turn into self-doubt, into constant questioning, into paralysis. The deeper you look, the more the edges of who you thought you were begin to blur. So here's the big question. Is deep self-awareness a gift or a curse? Nietzsche believed it could be both. If you can destroy your old beliefs and still stand strong, you gain a kind of freedom most people never touch. You become the author of your own reality. But if you can't, if the weight of that truth is too much, it can break you. Nietzsche called this strength the will to power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. The ability to build your own path when no path is given. To keep going, even when the universe is silent. But this isn't easy, and Nietzsche himself couldn't always carry the burden. In the end, he collapsed into madness. But maybe it wasn't madness, and maybe it was clarity so deep that the world could no longer follow, because to see reality without illusion is to walk alone. Here's where it gets even stranger. What if there is no true self at all? We spend our lives trying to find ourselves, thinking that beneath everything, there's a pure, real version of us waiting to be uncovered. But Nietzsche and other thinkers suggest something else, that the self is always changing, that we're not one thing but many things, a shifting mix of roles, memories, and masks. Even Buddhism teaches this, that the idea of a fixed self is just an illusion. So maybe the goal isn't to find who we are, but to create who we want to be. There's no final truth inside you, just a flame that flickers, changes, evolves, and maybe that's not something to fear, but something to embrace. So where does this leave us? In a strange place? Sounds mysterious place, a place without clear answers, but maybe that's okay. Nietzsche spoke of eternal return, the idea that we might live this life over and over again, exactly the same, forever. If that were true, would you still choose this life? Would you still choose the search for truth even if it brought pain? This is the final mystery. Can we live without certainty? Can we accept that self-awareness doesn't lead to answers, but to better questions? Maybe the point isn't to escape the darkness. Maybe it's to light a match and walk into it. Have you ever asked yourself, what if knowing who you are is the very thing that tears you apart? We grow up believing that self-awareness is a gift, that understanding ourselves will bring clarity, peace, maybe even happiness. But what if it does the opposite? What if the more you see, the less you can sleep? What if the more you understand, the more lost you feel? Let's begin with a simple story. The Greek myth of Icarus. He built wings to escape, soared too close to the sun, and fell to his death. People say it's about ambition, but what if it's really about self-awareness? About flying too close to the truth of who and what we are and being burned by it. This journey isn't about answers, it's about a door that opens inward. And what lies beyond that door isn't always light. Friedrich Nietzsche wasn't just a philosopher, he was a warning. He believed that the moment we became truly self-aware, when we started seeing ourselves from the outside, we began to suffer. Why? Because something inside us split. We weren't just living anymore. We were observing ourselves, living, judging, thinking, worrying. In his early writings, especially in The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche explains how we once lived in unity with nature, with instinct. But as humans evolved, we became aware of our own minds. That awareness created conflict, a war inside the self. This isn't just a theory. Look around. Depression, anxiety, obsession. They rise with self-reflection. The smarter we get, the more we question. The more we question, the less certain we become. We're no longer animals following instinct. We're beings stuck in our heads. Nietzsche saw it coming. He called it a tragedy, and we're still living it. Nietzsche once wrote, "Man is the sick animal. No other creature needs meaning to survive." But we do. We can't just eat, sleep, and mate. We need purpose. We need stories. And when we don't have them, we break. This is the dark side of self-awareness. It's not just about knowing your thoughts. It's about being trapped in them. Thinking becomes endless. You question everything. Your job, your life, your worth. You judge yourself. You relive every mistake, and it gets worse. The more you think, the more distant you feel. From others, from life, from yourself. It's like watching your own life from behind glass. Nietzsche believed this was the cost of consciousness, that we, unlike other animals, turned suffering inward. Instead of escaping danger, we imagine it. Instead of healing, we hold on to pain, and in this way, our own minds become our prisons. God is dead, and we have killed him. That's Nietzsche's most famous line, but people misunderstand it. He didn't mean a literal God. He meant that the old beliefs, the stories that gave us comfort, were no longer working. Science, reason, and progress had pushed them out. And what was left? Silence. For centuries, we believed in something higher. It gave us meaning. It helped us cope. But when those beliefs collapsed, we were left alone, with nothing above, and too much going on inside. This wasn't freedom, it was chaos. Nietzsche warned us, without a higher truth we'd have to become our own gods, but we weren't ready. And so the collapse of belief became a collapse of the self, and in the silence that followed, self-awareness turned dark. It became the echo of a world without meaning. Here's a twist. What if suffering isn't just something we hate? What if it's something we cling to? Sounds strange, right? But think about it. The pain you carry, it defines you. The trauma you survived, it becomes your identity. The more you hurt, the more real you feel. Nietzsche believed we all crave power. But when we can't control the world, we turn inward. We make pain our home. We feed the ego not with joy, but with wounds. Even worse, the ego fears being nothing. So it would rather be someone in pain than no one at all. And so, we repeat our stories. We relive the past. We wear our suffering like armor, even as it bleeds. Just dry to break free. You'd have to let go of the very thing you think makes you you. That's the terrifying part. But what if we stopped running? Nietzsche had an answer, not an easy one, but a true one. He called it amor fati, the love of fate. It means accepting everything. Even the dark, even the pain. It's not about pretending everything's fine. It's about walking straight into the storm and saying, I will not turn away. Carl Jung called it shadow work, facing the parts of yourself you hide. Taoism teaches the same. The light and dark are one. Freedom doesn't come from escape. It comes from integration, from embracing every piece of yourself, even the ones that hurt, especially those. Self-awareness isn't the end. It's the beginning of a deeper, harder, more honest path. And at the end of it, maybe, just maybe, peace. What if the very thing that helps us grow also breaks us? Self-awareness. It's often seen as a good thing, like waking up from a dream. But what if it's more like looking into a mirror that doesn't just reflect your face, but your soul? Your fears, your darkest thoughts. This mirror doesn't lie, it shows you everything, even the parts you never wanted to see. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, once said, "When you gaze long into the abyss gazes also into you." What did he mean by that? He meant that when you search for truth deep inside yourself, you might not like what you find. You might discover not only your strengths, but also your weaknesses, your lies, your emptiness. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. This is the hidden side of self-awareness. It's not just clarity, it's danger, a risk of going too deep, of losing your way, and this is where our journey begins. Long ago, before humans knew language, before we could write or think about our thoughts, we lived by instinct. Like animals, we followed our urges. We feared danger, sought food, chased pleasure. Life was simple, but then something changed. We became aware of ourselves. We could think about thinking. We could imagine the future, remember the past. We created gods, stories, beliefs. We started asking, who am I? Why am I here? It was the beginning of consciousness, the birth of the thinking self. This made us powerful, but it also made us fragile. Nietzsche called us the sick animal. Why? Because no other creature is at war with itself. No lion feels shame. No bird worries about tomorrow. But we do, because we are aware. We lost the peace of ignorance. We gained the burden of knowing. Now we aren't just living, we're watching ourselves live, judging, doubting, comparing. It gave us wisdom, but it also gave us fear. And fear, when it grows in silence, becomes something even darker. Deep inside each of us is something we don't want to admit. Jealousy, anger, regret, weakness. Nietzsche believed that self-awareness doesn't always make us better. Sometimes it makes us bitter. He had a word for it: resentment. It means a quiet, hidden hatred, the kind that builds up when we feel powerless, when we want something but can't have it, when we feel small but pretend to be good. Instead of facing our weakness, we cover it up. We say others are bad. We call our anger justice. We turn our pain into blame. This is how Nietzsche believed many moral systems were born. Not from love or truth, but from weakness pretending to be virtue. In other words, sometimes we say good just because we're too scared to be strong. This is the dark side of self-awareness. We don't just see the truth, we start hiding from it. We split ourselves in two, the person we show the world and the person we truly are, and that shadow, it waits, it grows. Think about this. What happens when you become too aware? When every thought is questioned, every feeling examined, every choice doubted? At first it might seem like wisdom, but soon it can become a trap. You start to see how small you are in the universe, how fast life moves, how much is uncertain, unknown, uncontrollable. You might begin to ask, what's the point? This is the feeling of existential dread. Of standing on the edge of a great dark sea with no shore in sight, Nietzsche warned that when we see too clearly, we may fall into nothingness. This is the danger of nihilism, the belief that nothing matters. Like Icarus, we fly too close to the sun of truth, and when our wings melt, we fall. Modern psychology sees this too. Overthinking, anxiety, depression, all signs that the mind is turning against itself. Because when we dig too deep, we don't always find gold. Sometimes we find emptiness. Sometimes self-awareness doesn't free us, it crushes us. But here's the part most people never talk about. The biggest danger isn't being asleep, or even being fully awake. It's being half awake. Nietzsche believed that most people wake up just enough to feel confused, but not enough to become strong. They start to see the cracks in the world, the lies in their beliefs, the emptiness behind their roles. But instead of changing, they get stuck, lost between two worlds, not asleep, not awake. This is where suffering grows. They try to find new meaning, maybe in politics, identity, or beliefs, but deep down they're still lost, because waking up isn't just about seeing the truth. It's about having the courage to build a new one. Nietzsche called on us to become creators, not victims, but that's hard. It takes strength, and most people aren't ready. So they stay in the middle, awake enough to suffer, but not awake enough to rise. Now here's a twist. What if not knowing is sometimes a gift? Nietzsche spoke of two forces, the Apollonian, order, reason, structure, and the Dionysian, chaos, passion, instinct. Most people live in the Apollonian world. It's safe, logical, clean. But the Dionysian world, the world of feeling, mystery, and chaos, is where the soul truly dances. Maybe, just maybe. Too much light blinds us. Maybe innocence is not stupidity, but protection. Maybe the universe covers certain truths not to punish us, but to protect us. Mystics talk about this too. The cloud of unknowing. The idea that some things are hidden for a reason, that to know everything might not be a blessing but a burden. What if the mind's veil is not a curse, but a kindness? This thought shakes everything, because it means that in our search for truth, we must be careful what we awaken. So, where does that leave us? Should we stop thinking? Stop questioning? No, that's not what Nietzsche believed. He wasn't asking us to turn away from the abyss. He was asking us to look into it and become something greater. He called this the Übermensch, not a tyrant or a god, but a person who creates their own meaning, who doesn't run from truth, but builds something beautiful from it. The true self-aware person doesn't hide from the darkness. They use it. They turn pain into strength, confusion into clarity, emptiness into creation. Self-awareness is a fire. It can burn you, but it can also forge you. The question is, will you be the one who stares into the abyss and finds the strength to rise? Final words. Self-awareness is not a straight path. It is a spiral, a descent before the rise, a breaking before the becoming. Some will fall, some will stay asleep, but a few will see the darkness and walk through it, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to become truly alive. What if the very thing that makes us human is also what makes us suffer the most? Think about it. You are aware of yourself, aware that you are alive, that one day you will die. You can imagine the future, remember the past, and question your own existence. That's called self-awareness, and it's often seen as a gift, a sign of our intelligence, our soul, our divine spark. But what if it's a curse? Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most powerful minds in history, believed that this awareness, this knowledge of ourselves, comes with a hidden price. He saw it not just as light, but also as a kind of darkness, a slow, silent pain that follows us from birth to death, a mirror we can never look away from. In this journey, we're going to explore that hidden cost. We'll walk into Nietzsche's world, a place where truth cuts deep, where comfort is stripped away, and where real freedom begins only after facing the abyss. Are you ready? Long ago, human beings didn't think the way we do now. We acted on instinct. We followed the seasons, the stars, our hunger and our fears, like animals, alive but not questioning why. But something changed. At some point, our minds turned inward. We didn't just feel life. We started to think about it, reflect on it. We became aware of ourselves. We gained reason, identity. Ego, in Nietzsche's view, this was a turning point, a split between two forces: the wild, passionate side of life, which he called Dionysian, and the orderly, thinking side, which he called Apollonian. The more we embraced order, control, and reflection, the more we lost touch with instinct, with unity, with peace.